On the afternoon of October 22, 2013, a cleaner employee began cleaning the blood from the bathroom in Danvers High School. Little did he know the dark events that had unfolded earlier that day. Colleen Ritzer, a 24-year-old math teacher at Danvers High School, had failed to return home after her work. When she didn't show up by evening, her family became alarmed and reported her missing to the authorities. As the hours passed without any word from Colleen, the search for her intensified, and soon police began combing the school and surrounding areas. By midnight, the police had launched a full-scale investigation, scouring the school and its grounds, hoping to find any sign of Colleen. Friends and family joined in, but despite their tireless efforts, no leads surfaced. The small town of Danvers was gripped with fear and uncertainty as the search continued throughout the night. By midnight, over 50 officers were combing the 30-acre school property. K-9 units alerted to a specific area approximately 100 yards into the woods. The Essex County District Attorney's Office was notified of a potential homicide investigation. Ritzer's family remained at the police station throughout the night. Her brother Dan told officers his sister always texted if running late. Her lesson plans, for the next day, were complete and laid out on her classroom desk. Colleagues confirmed she'd mentioned no after-school plans beyond her 3:30 p.m. meeting. In the early hours of October 23rd, investigators combed through the wooded area and discovered Colleen Ritzer's lifeless body, partially obscured by leaves and debris. Initial observations suggested brutal trauma to her head and neck. Near the body, they recovered a green recycling bin containing bloodied clothing, indicating an effort to dispose of evidence. The condition of the scene revealed multiple forms of violence. Ritzer had been stabbed, strangled, and sexually assaulted. A handwritten note reading, "I hate you all," was found nearby, adding a disturbing personal element to the crime. The brutality of the injuries contrasted sharply with the methodical way the killer had arranged the scene. Police processed the area with meticulous attention to detail. They photographed the drag marks, which showed a clear path from the school bathroom to the wooded area. Blood spatter analysis confirmed the attack began inside the bathroom before the body was moved. Investigators also collected fibers and other trace evidence from the recycling bin and surrounding foliage. They expanded the perimeter to ensure no evidence was overlooked. The discovery of Ritzer's belongings scattered near the body suggested a struggle may have occurred during the attack. Forensic specialists noted the absence of defensive wounds on Ritzer's hands, raising questions about whether she had been restrained. Colleen Elizabeth Ritzer was born on May 13, 1989, in Lawrence, Massachusetts, United States. She grew up in a loving family with her parents, Peggy and Thomas Ritzer, and her siblings, Laura and Daniel. She developed a deep love for learning from a young age. As a child, she was always curious and passionate about helping others. Her parents often described her as someone who naturally gravitated toward teaching, whether it was helping her younger brother with homework or assisting her friends in class. Colleen's dream of becoming a teacher took shape early on, and she was determined to make a positive impact on students' lives, just as her own teachers had done for her. Colleen's classroom at Danvers High School stood out from others in the building. The walls displayed motivational posters alongside student work, creating an environment that encouraged learning. She arranged desks in a way that promoted interaction, believing math should be collaborative rather than isolating. Former students recalled how she would write inspirational quotes on the whiteboard each morning, often pairing them with colorful illustrations. She dedicated extra hours after school to tutor students who struggled with algebra, sometimes spending hours on end without concern for her own time. Her commitment to her students also extended to her lunch breaks, where she would often eat in her classroom, offering support to students who were lonely or needed help. On weekends, she would respond to student emails about homework questions almost immediately. Social media played a significant role in her teaching approach, with her Twitter account featuring daily math puzzles, motivational messages, and homework reminders. And her bio, often too excited about the topics I'm teaching, reflected her genuine passion. Her impact on students was profound, as reflected in their testimonials. Many shared how Ritzer transformed their attitudes toward math, a subject that many found intimidating. One former student shared, "She made me feel like I wanted to go to math class." Colleagues admired her ability to tailor lessons to individual learning styles, developing alternative approaches until students grasped difficult concepts. On the day of the tragic event, Colleen Ritzer started her day as she always did, preparing for her lessons and greeting her students with her usual warmth. Throughout the morning, she was engaged in her typical routine, checking in with students who needed help and chatting with colleagues. The school day continued without any hint of the tragedy that would soon unfold. As the day progressed, Colleen continued her usual activities, teaching her final class of the day before preparing to leave. After the class ended, she was seen on security footage walking out of her classroom, seemingly calm and unhurried, as she made her way toward the bathroom down the hallway. The footage shows her entering the restroom, alone, with no sense of urgency or indication that anything was out of the ordinary. For all intents and purposes, it seemed like just another day in the life of a teacher, finishing up her duties and going about her routine as usual. As the minutes passed, Colleen Ritzer remained inside the bathroom. She never emerged on the CCTV footage, her absence growing more unsettling with each frame. However, when police later reviewed the security footage, just moments after Colleen entered the bathroom, a student was captured on camera following her into the restroom. The sight of a student trailing her, seemingly without cause or explanation, would later raise alarming questions. They recognized the teenager in the footage as a student from Danvers High School. It was the 14-year-old Philip Chism. Philip Chism arrived at Danvers High School in 2013, months before the attack on Colleen Ritzer, having recently moved from Clarksville, Tennessee. Born on January 21, 1999, Philip Daniel Chism was the son of Stacy Tremaine Chism and Diana Amanda Chism, and had 2 younger sisters. His early life was marked by frequent relocations due to his father's military career, contributing to a sense of instability. In 2011, after his parents' separation, Philip and his mother moved to Florida to live with her father. They later returned to Tennessee, where they shared a room with his younger sisters. During this time, Philip often sought refuge by spending extended periods at his best friend's house. His mother, Diana, had previously filed for divorce, citing issues such as physical, emotional, and alcohol abuse, though the couple reconciled shortly afterward. These familial challenges, combined with the frequent moves, likely influenced Philip's emotional and behavioral development. In 2013, he and his mother relocated to Danvers, Massachusetts, where Philip enrolled as a freshman at Danvers High School. Initially, he adapted well, joining the junior varsity soccer team and making friends. His new classmates knew him primarily as a quiet soccer player who showed skill on the field but rarely interacted with teammates. During practices, he remained silent, focusing solely on drills without engaging in conversation, a behavior that stood out among the typically talkative group of freshmen. Teachers noticed that Philip completed his schoolwork consistently but never volunteered answers during class discussions. When called upon, he gave brief responses before retreating into silence. His academic record showed no disciplinary issues, presenting him as an average student. So when the police watched the footage and saw Philip Chism enter the scene, they were able to piece together a minute-by-minute account of the events on October 22nd. At 2:54 p.m., the cameras captured Colleen Ritzer leaving her classroom and walking toward the second-floor women's bathroom. A minute later, at 2:55 p.m., Philip Chism entered the same bathroom wearing a hood and gloves. This timing showed he had followed her deliberately rather than encountering her by chance. At 3:06 p.m., another female student briefly opened the bathroom door but left immediately. The interruption lasted only seconds, suggesting she either saw nothing unusual or sensed danger and retreated. This moment became significant later when investigators realized the attack had already begun by that time. The student's quick exit meant Chism remained uninterrupted during the critical period. Chism exited the bathroom at 3:07 p.m. with his hood up, concealing his face from the cameras. His movements appeared purposeful rather than hurried. The footage showed him walking down the hallway before returning minutes later with a green recycling bin. He pulled the bin toward the bathroom at 3:14 p.m. and re-entered at 3:16 p.m. This action suggested an attempt to move or conceal evidence from the crime scene. At 3:22 p.m., Chism exited the bathroom again, this time dragging the recycling bin behind him. The weight of the bin caused visible strain as he moved it toward a wooded area behind the school. Investigators later determined he used the bin to transport Ritzer's body. The methodical nature of this act stood in contrast to what might be expected from a spontaneous, violent outburst. His repeated trips indicated planning rather than panic. The cameras captured Chism re-entering the school building at 4 p.m. He returned to the bathroom at 4:05 p.m. before exiting the school again. These additional visits raised questions about whether he attempted to clean the scene or retrieve forgotten items. The extended timeline showed he had ample opportunity to flee, but instead remained near the crime scene for over an hour after the attack. Later footage showed Chism at a movie theater, where he purchased a ticket using Ritzer's credit card for the 5:20 p.m. showing of the Woody Allen film, Blue Jasmine. This detail became important when prosecutors argued it demonstrated his attempt to establish an alibi. The normalcy of this activity contrasted sharply with the violence he had committed hours earlier. Investigators noted he showed no visible distress in the theater surveillance. Investigators later learned Chism had stolen a box cutter from an art class prior to the attack. This detail took on grim significance when the same type of weapon was used against Ritzer. School staff had been unaware of the missing tool until after the murder. Security cameras along Route 1 in Topsfield captured Philip Chism walking alone several hours after the murder. The footage showed him moving steadily. Witnesses later recalled seeing a teenager with bloodstains on his pants, although at the time, their significance wasn't recognized. One driver even noted the stains as Chism crossed the highway, but the driver did not connect them to the ongoing investigation. The surveillance footage helped establish a clear timeline of Chism's movements after leaving the school grounds. Around 10:30 p.m., police stopped Chism near the intersection of Route 1 and Washington Street. His clothing matched earlier descriptions from witnesses, and a pat-down revealed Colleen Ritzer's credit cards and driver's license in his pocket, linking him directly to the missing teacher. The discovery of these personal belongings was crucial in providing probable cause for his arrest. A more thorough search uncovered a box cutter tucked into his waistband, which forensic analysis later confirmed was the weapon used in the attack. The blade showed traces of blood that DNA testing linked to Ritzer, further implicating Chism. Forensic technicians also discovered multiple bloodstains on Chism's clothing. The pattern and placement of these stains suggested that he had been in close contact with Ritzer during the assault. His shoes bore traces of soil and leaves, which were consistent with the wooded area where her body was found. This evidence placed him at both the initial crime scene and the location where Ritzer's body was later concealed. Additionally, authorities recovered Ritzer's cell phone near a movie theater Chism had visited earlier in the evening. The phone's location suggested an attempt to dispose of evidence along his route. The personal items found on Chism further painted a picture of his actions after the murder. In addition to Ritzer's credit cards and ID, police found her car keys, which were later matched to her vehicle still parked at Danvers High School. This indicated that Chism had rifled through her belongings after the attack. Forensic analysis showed his fingerprints on multiple surfaces, including the keys. These discoveries revealed a calculated effort to cover his tracks, including an attempt to dispose of evidence along his route. During the police stop, Chism's calm demeanor raised questions about his mental state. He answered questions without apparent distress, a behavior that contrasted sharply with the violent nature of the crime he had committed just hours earlier. This composed behavior would later be a key element in the prosecution's argument against an insanity defense during his trial. Medical personnel also noted superficial cuts on his hands, consistent with defensive wounds. These injuries suggested that Chism had engaged in a struggle with Ritzer during the initial attack. Philip Chism's trial began on April 6, 2015, at Salem Superior Court, where he was tried as an adult for first-degree murder. Despite being 14 years old at the time of the crime, Massachusetts law required him to be tried as an adult for murder, while the charges of aggravated rape and armed robbery were handled as youth offenses. The prosecution argued that the crime was premeditated, pointing to Chism's actions leading up to the murder, including bringing weapons to school. The defense, however, claimed that Chism suffered from early-onset schizophrenia, which impaired his ability to understand his actions, citing his family history of mental illness as evidence. The defense presented compelling psychiatric testimony to support their claim. Dr. Richard Dudley, a psychiatrist, testified that Chism had been hearing voices since the age of 10, a sign of a long-term mental health condition that had gone untreated for years. His family history further strengthened this argument. Chism's maternal aunt had been treated for schizophrenia, and his grandmother had experienced recurrent mental health issues. Chism's move from Tennessee to Massachusetts was described as a stressor that exacerbated his condition. School records indicated a decline in his mental health, and the defense argued that his isolation and instability contributed to his mental breakdown and violent actions. The prosecution countered by focusing on evidence of premeditation. Investigators found that Chism had searched online for murder methods and body disposal techniques in the weeks before the attack. The prosecution also pointed to his purchase of gloves and a hoodie days before the murder as further evidence of planning. After the crime, Chism cleaned the scene, changed clothes, and disposed of evidence, actions which prosecutors argued demonstrated a clear awareness of his crime and an effort to conceal it. While awaiting trial for Colleen Ritzer's murder, Philip Chism attacked a female counselor at the Massachusetts Department of Youth Services facility in June 2014. The 29-year-old victim worked at the Dorchester Detention Center where Chism was being held. The assault occurred when Chism followed her into a bathroom, used a pencil as a weapon, and pinned her against a wall, attempting to strangle her. Methods similar to those used against Ritzer. The attack lasted several minutes before other staff members intervened. The victim later testified about the lasting psychological effects of the assault, describing ongoing fear and PTSD. In a statement read in court, she recalled being unable to leave her bedroom for hours, out of fear that Chism might be waiting for her. Correctional officers found violent handwritten notes in Chism's cell after the incident, including threats against female staff members at the facility. These writings revealed a disturbing pattern of violent fantasies. Investigators noted striking similarities between the two attacks, such as Chism following his victims into bathrooms, using strangulation, and choosing isolated locations. Both attacks involved improvised weapons, a box cutter with Ritzer and a pencil with the counselor, suggesting a consistent methodology. Surveillance footage showed Chism observing both victims before the attacks. Staff at the detention facility reported that Chism had shown no signs of mental distress before the assault. Following the attack, the detention center was locked down, and the counselor was treated for minor injuries and psychological trauma. The incident raised concerns about security protocols for high-risk inmates, prompting Massachusetts officials to review procedures. Philip Chism faced new charges, including attempted murder, assault with a dangerous weapon, and kidnapping. Forensic evidence confirmed that Ritzer had been sexually assaulted before her death, and surveillance footage showed Chism calmly attending a movie shortly after the murder. The prosecution also highlighted his use of Ritzer's credit card and stealing a knife from a BJ's wholesale club, suggesting he was aware of his actions. Additionally, Chism's internet history revealed a growing interest in violence, which prosecutors argued pointed to premeditation rather than a psychotic episode. In closing arguments, Assistant District Attorney Kate McDougall urged the jury to focus on the deliberate cruelty of Chism's actions, stressing that his behavior, both before and after the murder, demonstrated a clear awareness of what he had done. She argued that Chism's ability to plan and conceal evidence showed that he was in control of his actions and understood their wrongfulness. In contrast, the defense asked for mercy, emphasizing Chism's age and mental health struggles. They argued that his psychosis prevented him from making rational decisions and that he should be treated as a mentally ill individual, not as a criminal. The jury was then tasked with determining whether Chism's actions were the result of premeditation and criminal awareness, or if they were the product of a psychotic break.
Charging the defendant, Philip Chism, with aggravated rape. What say you of the defendant, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Philip Chism has been found guilty of brutally raping and murdering his 9th grade teacher when he was just 14 years old. The now 16-year-old was accused of killing 24-year-old Colleen Ritzer in October 2013 at Danvers High School in Massachusetts. Ritzer was raped, strangled, cut, and slashed 16 times with a box cutter in a school bathroom and was later sexually assaulted with a tree branch, according to officials. He then used a trash bin to bring her body into nearby woods. Chism, who was tried as an adult, was found guilty by an Essex Superior Court jury of first-degree murder, armed robbery, and 1 count of aggravated rape, but he was found not guilty on another aggravated rape count, which related to an alleged assault in the woods.
Judge David Lowy presided over the sentencing, describing the murder as brutal and senseless, and Chism received a mandatory life sentence with the possibility of parole after 40 years, in line with Massachusetts law for juvenile offenders. Chism was also sentenced to concurrent 40-year terms for the rape and armed robbery convictions, meaning he would be eligible for parole in his 50s. Legal experts noted that this effectively guaranteed he would spend most of his life in prison. The acquittal on one rape charge reflected the jury's careful attention to legal standards, specifically the requirement that rape victims must be alive during the assault, which created reasonable doubt in that case. Ritzer's family, though relieved by the verdict, expressed that it could not bring Colleen back. Her father, Tom Ritzer, shared his anguish, saying he walked the same halls as his daughter's killer. The family, who attended every day of the trial, also spoke about the emotional toll of hearing graphic details of Colleen's final moments. These statements underscored the enduring pain caused by their loss, despite the legal outcome. During sentencing, Judge Lowy acknowledged the profound impact of Ritzer's murder on the Danvers community, students, and first responders. He balanced the need for justice with recognition of Chism's youth at the time of the crime. Victim impact statements from Ritzer's family and colleagues highlighted her dedication as a teacher and the lasting void left by her death. These statements help provide a fuller understanding of Ritzer's life beyond the crime. Legal analysts noted that the case tested Massachusetts' approach to juvenile sentencing, with Chism's life sentence including the possibility of parole after 40 years. This differed from adult sentences, which often do not offer parole for first-degree murder. The verdict brought some closure to the Danvers community, which had followed the case since Ritzer's death. Chism showed no visible reaction during the verdict or sentencing, and his defense team indicated they would explore options for appeal, though success seemed unlikely given the strong evidence.
A man convicted of killing a teacher in Danvers when he was a teenager has now pleaded guilty in a separate assault case. 25-year-old Philip Chism pleaded guilty today in Suffolk Juvenile Court to attempted murder and kidnapping charges. He was 15 when he was charged with attacking and seriously injuring a female DYS worker back in 2014. The incident actually happened while he was in custody, awaiting trial for raping and killing his Danvers high school math teacher when he was 14. A judge sentenced Chism to 17 to 20 years in state prison for the attack on the youth worker. He'll serve that at the same time he's serving his murder sentence, which runs at least 30 years.
During sentencing, correctional officers testified that disturbing materials, including diagrams of the facility's layout and violent threats, were found in Chism's cell, indicating premeditation and a continued pattern of violent intent. On February 25, 2025, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court denied Chism's appeal for a new trial in the murder case of Colleen Ritzer. Chism had argued that expert testimony regarding his mental illness was wrongfully excluded from the trial and that the evidence did not support his convictions for rape and robbery. However, the court ruled that these claims were insufficient to overturn the jury's verdict, affirming the original conviction. This decision brought a sense of relief to Ritzer's family, who had always believed that Chism's actions were premeditated and that he was beyond rehabilitation. Ritzer's family expressed gratitude for the court's decision, which they said would allow them to continue their healing process. In a statement, they noted that the brutality of Chism's crime made it unthinkable to consider the possibility of parole at an early age, especially if his sentence were reduced. We're thankful that the court has upheld the decision. This allows our family to continue to heal and grieve in peace, they said. Colleen Ritzer's tragic death sparked significant change in Massachusetts, leading to reforms aimed at improving school safety and mental health support for students. The case prompted the state to implement mandatory mental health training for teachers, as well as enhanced threat assessment and early intervention strategies. Increased funding for student counseling services was also secured, ensuring that future generations of students would receive better support. In addition to these reforms, Colleen's family channeled their grief into creating memorial programs that focus on kindness and education rather than dwelling on the tragedy. Through initiatives like the Colleen E. Ritzer Memorial Scholarship and the hashtag Kindness for Colleen campaign, they continue to advocate for mental health awareness and the positive values Colleen embodied as a teacher. Since its creation, the scholarship has awarded over $593,000 to 114 aspiring educators, with recipients encouraged to carry forward Colleen's teaching philosophy in their own classrooms. Her commitment to kindness, compassion, and dedication to students continues to influence education today, particularly through those she inspired. Her story highlights how education, kindness, and mental health awareness can create lasting, powerful change, demonstrating that even in the darkest times, light endures. Her influence as a teacher continues to shape not just academic lives, but also values and actions that ripple far beyond the classroom. As Colleen herself once said, "No matter what happens in life, be good to people." Being good to people is a wonderful legacy to leave behind.